Yo, what is up, guys? It's Cohen back here again today with another video. Back with another recap of the NBA games from today. The main game I want to talk about is Clippers Nets. That was like the big game on the slate today, so I'll talk about that at the end. Real quick, I'm going to do a quick run through of the 5 other games that happened today. Drop a like, drop a subscribe, whatever you're feeling, and I'll go ahead and get into it. I'll go ahead and start with Raptors Magic. Raptors Magic was interesting for one reason, and it was Fred VanVleet. Fred VanVleet broke the Raptors franchise record for points in a game with 54, beating DeMar DeRozan, who had 51 previously. DeMar DeRozan had a pretty good tweet afterwards saying, shout out to Freddie, you deserve it. Kyle Lowry's old ass wasn't going to do it, so I'm glad you did. I missed DeRozan in Toronto, man. I wish that team had more success, but shout out to Freddie. He was incredible tonight. He had 11 threes in three quarters. I really thought he had a shot to break the three-point record, which is held by Klay Thompson with 14, but he just didn't end up shooting enough. I don't even know if he ended up shooting more than 14 threes, but he never ended up making another one. So shout out to Freddie. He had a really good game. The Magic continued to skid. This team's just not good. I might make a video on them about why they should blow it up, because I think this core has easily peaked. You're not going to do much more with Vucevic, Gordon, those guys. I think those guys should be looked to move, especially Vucevic. I think you could get a lot for him. I think Fournier should be moved. I'm sure some contender would look for a guy on an expiring contract. I think there's a lot of moves you need to make here, especially with Fultz out for the season, Isaac out for the season. You just need to cut your losses, tank, and then come back into it fresh next season with Fultz, Isaac, and just kind of see where you can go with that young core. Grizzlies Pacers, not much happened in this game. The Grizzlies got slaughtered. Sabonis was incredible. He's played like an all-star. He deserves to be an all-star. Ja had a really bad game. It's going to happen. He's a young guy, even though he's a very young star, so people don't expect bad games from him. They're going to come. He's young. He'll be okay. Blazers Wizards, this game was fun. It was kind of a blowout for most of it, but right at the end, the Wizards started to make a comeback. Beal had a pretty good game. He's had, I think, 37 in a losing effort. You had Westbrook, who had a triple-double. He had some great plays, but really it was Dame at the end who killed the Wizards. The Wizards also, a big downfall for them is Davis Bertans. Bertans has been terrible this season. If you haven't looked, I tweeted about this earlier, but last season Bertans shot 42% from 3 on like 8 attempts a game, which is incredible. And then he was given an $80 million contract, and now coming into tonight's game, he was shooting 32% from 3 on just as many attempts per game. I think like about half an attempt less per game, which is probably good if he's shooting them that poorly. And after tonight, where he went 2 for 10 shooting, I wouldn't be. I'm sure that percentage went down. So Bertans needs to turn it around. He was terrible tonight, and Robin Lopez is not a very serviceable center at this point. So they got kind of killed. Speaking of not having serviceable bigs, we'll get into Celtics Warriors, where the Warriors came into this game without James Wiseman, and then Kevon Looney went out with an ankle injury during the game. The Warriors just did not have any bigs to keep up with the Celtics. They just couldn't protect the rim. They couldn't stop anyone. Kevon Looney, if they had him, they might have won this game. Ended up losing 111 to 107. Tatum had a pretty good game. Brown struggled a good bit, but Tatum came up really big, and the Celtics got a pretty big win over the Warriors. Missing Marcus Smart is huge because Steph Curry just cooked them all night, and Curry made this a really close game at the end. It wasn't super close going into the final few minutes, and then Curry just kind of turned it on. He had made some great plays. Juan Toscano-Anderson hit a 3 at the end to make it a 4-point game, and that's where it ended up. So shout out to the Warriors for fighting, even though they do have these injuries. Shout out to the Celtics for winning without their best defender and Marcus Smart, who I'm sure would have gotten this Curry matchup if he was there. So shout out to them. Pistons Jazz, not much to say about this game. Josh Jackson and Jeremy Grant on the Pistons side of the game had pretty big games. Donovan Mitchell had a really big game on the Jazz side of the ball. The Jazz continue to roll. They're back after the Clippers lost today to the Nets. They're back in the first spot in the Western Conference. They're a really good team. I haven't fully decided yet if I think they're an actual title contender. Part of me feels like they could have like a Hawks of like 2015 feel to them, just because they don't have that superstar talent that traditionally championship teams need. So I guess we'll just see if they continue it. I think at this point they absolutely are a threat to at least make to that Western Conference Finals. They play really hard every night. They stifle you on defense, and it makes your team frustrated, as was evident by Blake Griffin, who has just been having a bad season all around. He really is looking like he's kind of washed. I'm hoping he can turn it around at some point, because it's just not looking good for him. And it really just had me reminiscing on the Lob City Clippers, man. I kind of want to make like a video reminiscing about that team, because that team was fun as hell to watch, and I really wish that team had more success, because I don't know. I liked a lot of guys in that team. I like Chris Paul. I like Blake Griffin. DeAndre Jordan was fun at that point. So I don't know. They were kind of a fun team. I just wish they had more success. And that brings me to Clippers Nets, where I think the biggest takeaway from this game is how much the Nets' big three buys into what they're doing here in Brooklyn. I think that it's been evident. I think they've talked about it, but it's cool to see on the court, especially against. This is the best team they've played so far, the LA Clippers. They haven't had a matchup with the Lakers yet, and this Clippers team was their first big test where people have been talking can they play defense? Can they get stops? Can they beat these big time teams? And they did it tonight, won 124 to 120. You had great games from everyone in the big three. DJ caught a few lobs. Steve Nash deserves some credit for this because he had a pretty interesting lineup today. They benched DeAndre Jordan and they started the big three, Harden, Kyrie, Durant, with Joe Harris and Jeff Green at the center, which I thought was a stroke of genius, especially against a team like the Clippers who run out a shorter big in Serge Ibaka, a guy who Jeff Green could have an okay time defending if he just plays strong, and Ibaka didn't do too great tonight. So Jeff Green did a great job on him. I think that was a great adjustment they made. And then when Zubac came in, they would put back in DeAndre Jordan to bring that height back. DeAndre Jordan is still not very good, but he was serviceable enough tonight for them to get the win. Like I said, big games from the big three. And when I was talking about them buying in, really, if you watch back that fourth quarter, the way that they shared the ball and the way that they made plays for each other was incredible. I know people talk about there only being one ball, but if you buy into the other players like this, it doesn't matter if there's one ball if you share it as well as they do. You've got Kyrie who hit a crazy circus layup. The next possession, James Harden hits a step back three. The next possession, Kevin Durant hits a pull up mid range. They were all killing you from their favorite zones to hit you from, and they were just sharing the ball incredibly well. James Harden forced a 3-point foul from Marcus Morris. They were just doing amazing things. Kevin Durant hit another mid range, and I think when you look at this team, I think that's the big thing, that obviously the defense is going to need to come along. They're going to need to play better defense. They can't get a stop a lot of the time. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George a lot of the time tonight got what they wanted. Paul George didn't have a great game. Kawhi had a really good game. And I think it really came down to the fact that Paul George really didn't start to turn it up until the end. He did get better, like I said, towards the end of the game, but those early minutes are when they really needed him to prevent the lead from getting too big and prevent the Nets from kind of closing them out. If they had established a lead earlier and then had a chance to hold off a Nets run, I think that they probably could have held it off. But the fact that the Nets were kind of up and the Clippers kept fighting back, I just don't think you can do that against this Nets team. I think the key to beating this Nets team is to establish a lead, feed off of that bad defense that they play and establish a lead, because in this crunch time when you're going up against guys like James Harden, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, it's going to be so hard once all three of those guys get back on the floor to put them away. You got to get a lead before those minutes, and then you just have to pray and hope you can hold it. I think that's the key to beating these guys. The Clippers just didn't do it tonight. Maybe they'll get another chance. Like I said, I think this might be a finals preview. So maybe they'll get a chance in a 7-game series to prove that they can do that against the Nets. But until now, we'll just have to wait for another matchup. I love these championship type matchups. I can't wait for the Nets to play the Lakers coming up. I can't wait for the Nets to play the Sixers also. I believe that's this weekend. Potential Eastern Conference Finals preview. It's going to be really interesting to see how the Nets try and game plan for Joel Embiid, because you can't start Jeff Green against Joel Embiid or Jeff Green might die. Although that's also every player you put up against Joel Embiid. So I guess we'll see how Steve Nash plans for that. The Nets do still need to fix these holes. Like I mentioned, they need better defenders. Amon Shumpert is coming in as a wing defender. Really, they need a better big to match up with a guy like Joel Embiid, or if you face the Lakers in the finals, like a Anthony Davis, say you match up against the Nuggets, you need someone to stop a Nikola Jokic. You just need a better big. And I think that they're going to make those moves. People keep talking about them. I don't need to harp on that stuff. Good win for the Nets tonight. And with that, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is out for the Thunder in tomorrow's game against the Rockets. We're going to lose by 90. So if you want to see a team get blown out, tune into that. And I think that's about it. So I'll see you guys later. Everyone, say it back.